The average life expectancy of an Imperial Guardsman on the active front line of Sector 44 is exactly 15 hours. This statistic accounts for orc snipers, stray artillery, nutritional deficiency, and the possibility of being executed by one's own commissar for looking insufficiently zealous during a charge. Trooper Dents has been serving on the front line for 15 years. He is not a super soldier. He is not a tactical genius. He does not possess the gene seed of a Primarch or the faith of a saint. In fact, Trooper Dents possesses the survival instincts of a damp sponge. He survives because he exists in a localized bubble of supreme ignorance. The universe tries to kill him constantly, but Trooper Dents is simply too busy with minor administrative tasks to notice.
The incident began on a Tuesday, deep in Trench Network Alpha 9. The shelling was heavy, the mud was waist-deep. But inside the command dugout, a crisis was unfolding that eclipsed the war. Sergeant Grit Harkin was staring at the supply crate with the expression of a man whose soul has finally broken. "Empty," Harkin whispered. "It's empty." "Is it ammo, Sarge?" Trooper Dents asked, polishing his boots with a rag he found. "Are we out of bolt shells?" "Worse, Dents," Harkin said, his voice trembling. "It's the standard issue Hygiene Squares. We are out of paper." A silence fell over the dugout. Strong men, killers who had faced down tyrannid swarms, looked at each other with genuine terror. A guardsman can fight without food. He can fight without sleep. He cannot fight with a chafed undercarriage. "We need a resupply," Harkin declared. "But the quartermaster won't release a new pallet without a signed Form 77 ply from the colonel." The colonel was in the High Command bunker. The High Command bunker was 2 miles away, across no man's land, a stretch of terrain currently occupied by 3,000 orc boys, 2 defiler engines, and a very enthusiastic sniper.
Harkin looked at his squad. He needed a runner. He needed someone brave enough to charge through hell, or stupid enough not to realize it was hell. He looked at Dents. Dents was currently trying to clean a spot of mud off his bayonet with his own saliva. "Dents!" "Yes, Sarge?" "Take this form. Go to the bunker. Get the colonel's signature. Bring back the paper." "Right-o, Sarge." Dents stood up, adjusting his helmet, which was slightly too large and kept sliding over his eyes. "Should I take the scenic route or the trench route?" Just go, Dents, and try not to die. The paperwork for casualties is a nightmare." Dents climbed the ladder out of the trench. The moment his head cleared the parapet, the war greeted him. The air was filled with tracer fire. Explosions churned the earth. It was a symphony of destruction. Dents didn't notice the majesty of war. He noticed the mud. "Typical," Dents muttered, pulling his boot out of the suction of the clay. "Just polish these. Now look at them." 300 meters away, perched in a ruined church tower, an orc sniper named Deadeye Krumpa lined up his shot. Krumpa was a legend among the greenskins. He had a scope made from 3 telescopes duct-taped together. He centered the crosshairs on Dents's forehead. "Gonna pop him," Krumpa chuckled, like a grape. He squeezed the trigger. At that exact nanosecond, Dents realized his shoelace was untied. "Oh, bother," Dents sighed. He bent down abruptly to tie his lace. Zip!
The high-caliber round occupied the space where Dents's brain had been a fraction of a second earlier. It passed harmlessly over his head and struck the soldier standing 10 meters behind him, a traitor chaos cultist who was sneaking up to stab Dents in the back. The cultist's head exploded.
Dents stood up, testing his knot. There, much better. Safety first. He continued walking. He passed a crater where a Chimera tank was burning. He passed a crater that was just a crater. Suddenly, a shadow fell over him. A mortar shell, fired by the traitor artillery, was arcing down. It was an earthshaker round, designed to level bunkers. It was screaming straight for Dents. Any other soldier would have dived. Dents was looking at his map. "Let's see," Dents murmured, turning the map sideways. "Is this north, or is this a coffee stain?" The shell landed 3 feet to his left. It hit a patch of extremely soft, boggy mud. It didn't explode. It went thwomp and sank deep into the mire, the fuse failing to ignite due to water damage. Dents looked at the mud splash on his trousers. He tutted loudly. "Honestly," he complained to the battlefield at large, "you'd think the munitorium could afford better drainage. It's a health hazard out here." He stepped onto the unexploded tail fin of the bomb to cross a particularly deep puddle, using the death device as a convenient stepping stone. Hup! Dry feet. Excellent.
Ahead of him loomed the enemy lines. Due to the fog of war and Dents's inability to read a compass, he had drifted off course. He wasn't heading to the command bunker. He was heading straight for the forward operating base of the Iron Warriors Chaos Space Marines. He saw the jagged spikes. He saw the black metal ramparts. "Ah," Dents smiled, squinting through the smoke. "That looks like the admin block. Needs a coat of paint, though. Very gloomy." He marched up to the front door of hell, clutching his request for toilet paper, fully expecting to be reprimanded for being late. Dents emerged from the smoke, clutching his requisition form. Looming ahead of him was the structure he assumed to be the command bunker. To be fair to Trooper Dents, the silhouette was blocky and massive. However, unlike a standard Imperial bunker, this structure had tracks, exhausts belching demonic smoke, and, quote, was covered in the flayed skins of loyalists. It was a Land Raider, a heavy assault tank of the Chaos Iron Warriors, currently idling its engines while waiting to crush a refugee column. Dents did not see a war machine. He saw a poorly maintained municipal building. "Typical," Dents tutted, shaking his head at the spikes adorning the hull. "Budget cuts. They can't even afford to trim the rebar. It's a health and safety violation waiting to happen." He approached the massive assault ramp at the front of the vehicle. Just as he arrived, the ramp hissed and began to lower with a grinding mechanical screech that sounded like the screams of the damned. Dents checked his watch. "Ah, automatic doors. At least the ADA compliance is up to code." He walked up the ramp, wiping his muddy boots on the metal grating, which was designed to shred tires, but served Dents as a very aggressive doormat. The interior of a Chaos Land Raider is a sensory assault. It smells of old blood, ozone, and unwashed transhuman giants. The lighting is exclusively red emergency strobes. The air is thick with the chanting of bound demons in the engine block. Dents walked in, blinking. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing in the gloom. "Delivery for the Colonel? Form 77 ply? Anybody home?" He found himself in the main troop compartment. Standing there were 10 Chaos Space Marines of the Iron Warriors Legion. They were 7 feet tall. They were encased in ceramite layers thick enough to stop a tank shell. Their helmets were fashioned into grinning metal skulls. Their power claws hummed with lethal energy. They turned slowly to look at the small, muddy human who had just wandered into their kill box. For a Chaos Space Marine trained over centuries to process threats in microseconds, the presence of Dents caused a fatal logic error. He wasn't attacking, he wasn't fleeing, he wasn't screaming, he was looking for a desk. It is important to note the psychology of the traitor legions. They are accustomed to terror. They thrive on the fear of their victims. When faced with a man who looks at them with the mild annoyance of someone trying to find the restroom in a confusing shopping mall, their cognitive functions essentially reboot. "Mortal!" boomed the squad leader, a champion named Vorgar the Pulverizer. His voice was a tectonic plate of hatred. Dents looked at the giant. He squinted at the skulls hanging from Vorgar's belt.
"I just walked in, mate," Dents replied, tapping his clipboard. "Door was open. Listen, are you the night shift security? You're wearing a lot of gear. Must be heavy." Vorgar looked at his power fist. "I am Death Incarnate." "Right, Death. Got it." Dents nodded, checking his form. "Is that a rank? Are you Senior Death or Junior Death? I need a signature from a commissioned officer. Is the colonel in the back?" The squad leader froze. He looked at his battle brothers. They looked back. "Brother," one Terminator whispered over the internal vox, "is he a spy? An assassin? He is too calm." "He must be a psyker," another hissed. "Look at his eyes. They are dead, like a shark." Dents's eyes were dead not because of psychic power, but because he had spent 4 hours trying to get mud out of his socks. "Look, big lad," Dents sighed, stepping past the 8-foot killing machine to check behind a stack of ammo crates. "I don't have all day. The sergeant needs this paper. If you're not authorized to sign, just say so. No need to be dramatic with the voice modulator." Dents squeezed through the gap between 2 Terminators. His shoulder brushed against the sacred, rune-encrusted armor of a berserker. "Excuse me," Dents murmured. "Tight squeeze. You lot really need to organize your filing cabinets better." The berserker raised his chain axe. He was about to split Dents from crown to navel. "Wait," Vorgar commanded. "Do not strike. If he is an agent of the Alpha Legion, he could be rigged to blow. He is a walking trap." The Iron Warriors, masters of siege warfare and paranoia, terrified of a trap that didn't exist, lowered their weapons. They watched, paralyzed, as the little man walked to the front of the tank, realized there was no desk, sighed loudly, and turned around. "Useless," Dents announced to the room of demigods. "Absolutely useless administrative center. Not even a reception desk. I'm reporting this to HR." The incident. Dents began the long walk back to the ramp. He was frustrated. He felt wasted. As he squeezed past the squad leader one last time, a physics miracle occurred. Dents's webbing gear, specifically the safety ring of his last remaining frag grenade, caught on one of the jagged decorative spikes of Vorgar's knee plate. Dents took a step forward. The grenade stayed attached to the spike. The pin stayed attached to the grenade. Wait, no, strike that. Reverse it. The pin stayed attached to the spike. The grenade stayed in Dents's pocket. Ping. The sound of a spoon flying off a grenade is distinctive. In a quiet room, it sounds like a dropped coin.
In a land raider full of super soldiers, it sounds like the bell signaling the end of the world. Vorgar looked down. He saw the pin dangling from his knee. He looked at Dents's pocket. He heard the fuse hiss. Dents, deafened by the earlier artillery and his own internal monologue about socks, heard nothing. "Right," Dents said, stepping onto the ramp. "I'll try the building next door. Thanks for nothing, lads." He walked down the ramp, into the fresh air. Inside the tank, panic ensued. "Grenade!" roared the berserker. "It was a suicide bomber!" screamed the squad leader. "I knew it!" yelled the tactician. "The Alfarius gambit!" Dents walked 5 paces, 10 paces. He stopped to admire a particularly nice rock. Ka-boom! The Land Raider erupted. Ammunition stores cooked off. Promethium tanks ignited. The massive war machine turned into a fireball that expanded upward, tossing the turret into the sky like a jaunty hat. The shockwave flapped Dents's coattails. He didn't flinch. He just looked up at the sky, which was suddenly dark with smoke. "Told you," Dents muttered, pulling his collar up. "Thunder. Definitely going to rain. Good thing I brought my coat." He continued his walk, completely unaware that he had just single-handedly decapitated the enemy's armored spearhead with a wardrobe malfunction. Behind him, the burning wreck of the Land Raider cast a long, heroic shadow over the little man who was just looking for a pen. Trooper Dents walked through the smoking ruins of the inner compound. The explosion of the Land Raider had conveniently blown open the blast doors to the central keep, creating a shortcut that Dents appreciated immensely. He stepped into the command room. Ideally, an Imperial command room is a place of maps, strategists, and ticking cogitators. This room, however, had been redecorated by its new occupants. The maps were nailed to the walls with daggers. The strategists had been replaced by piles of burning incense. The cogitators were screaming. At the far end of the room, seated on a throne made of fused lasguns and spinal columns, sat Lord Malgar the Flare. Malgar was a vision of terror. His armor was ancient Baroque ceramite. His helmet was a rictus of hate. And draped over his massive shoulders was the torn, blood-stained greatcoat of the Imperial colonel he had butchered an hour ago. He held a daemon's sword that whispered madness into the air. He was waiting for a challenger worthy of his blade. Enter Trooper Dents. Dents walked up the aisle, stepping over a ritual circle drawn in entrails. "Bit grim in here," Dents noted, adjusting his helmet. "Ventilation is terrible, and someone really needs to mop up that floor. Sticky." He approached the throne. He recognized the coat. "Colonel," Dents called out, snapping a crisp salute. "Message from Sergeant Harkin." Malgar the Flare stopped caressing his daemon blade. He looked down at the tiny human. He saw the clipboard. He felt the absolute confusing lack of fear emanating from the creature. "Mortal?" Malgar boomed, his voice shaking dust from the ceiling. "Do you dare approach the Flare? Do you seek death?" "I seek a signature, actually," Dents clarified, marching up the steps of the dais. "It's Form 77 Ply. Requisition for Hygiene Squares. Urgent priority. The lads are getting chafed." "Chafed?"
Mulgar roared, standing up. He towered over Dents, 8 feet of spiked malice. I will chafe your soul. I will wear your skin as a scarf. Right, very good, sir, Dents noted, holding out the clipboard and a cheap biro pen. If you could just sign at the bottom. Date and time, please, and press hard. It's a carbon copy.
Malgar stared. The sheer audacity paralyzed him. Was this a trick? Was this the legendary Calidus assassin technique of boring the target into submission? I am Malgar. I killed your commander. I am wearing his coat. Yes, I see that, sir. Suits you. Shoulders are a bit tight, though, Dents critiqued. Look, Colonel, I know you're busy being terrifying, but if I go back without this paper, the sergeant will have my hide, and he's much scarier than you. The insult pierced Malgar's pride like a power lance. Rage, pure and unadulterated, flooded his veins. Enough, the Chaos Lord screamed. Guy, worm! He raised the daemon sword high above his head. Dark energy crackled. He prepared to bring it down in a stroke that would split Dents and the atom he was standing on. Wait, Dents shouted, thrusting the clipboard directly into Malgar's face. You need to initial the amendment, subsection C, otherwise the audit will fail. The sudden motion of the clipboard, a terrifyingly mundane object appearing in his combat vision, caused Malgar to flinch instinctively backward. He took a step back. His massive, heavy ceramite boot landed squarely on the trailing edge of the colonel's great coat, the trophy he wore with such arrogance. It is a well-documented fact in the 41st millennium that capes are the #1 cause of workplace accidents among high command. More warlords have been defeated by tripping over their own majesty than by enemy fire. It is the curse of being dramatic. Malgar's foot pinned the coat. His momentum carried him backward. Physics took over. No, Malgar gasped as his balance failed. He windmilled his arms. The daemon sword, hungry for blood and not particularly picky about whose blood it was, swung wildly. As Malgar fell backward onto his own throne of spikes, the sword arc intersected with his own neck. Snick. There was a wet thud. The Lord of Chaos sat down heavily on his throne. His helmeted head, separated from his body, rolled down the steps and stopped at Dents's feet. Blood, pressurized by rage and transhuman biology, sprayed across the room. A significant amount of it splattered onto the clipboard Dents was holding. Silence fell over the room. The demons in the walls stopped whispering, presumably out of second-hand embarrassment. Dents wiped a speck of blood from his nose. He looked at the clipboard. The form was covered in a large, jagged red smear right on the signature line. Red ink, Dents noted, examining the paper. A bit flamboyant, Colonel, but technically legible. He tapped the severed head with his boot. Are we done then? Can I go? I think I hear the kettle boiling. The head did not answer. Righto, carry on. Dents saluted the corpse. I'll see myself out. Dents walked back across no man's land. The shelling had stopped. The enemy, witnessing their leader decapitate himself in front of a lone guardsman, had broken and fled in superstitious terror. Dents didn't notice the retreat. He was focused on keeping the paper dry. He slid back into the trench. Sergeant Harkin jumped up, lasgun raised. Dents, Harkin shouted. You're alive. We heard explosions. We saw the enemy rout. What happened? Dents stood there. He was covered in soot from the tank explosion. He was splattered with the blood of a Chaos Lord. He held the clipboard like a holy relic. "It was a bit of a trek, Sarge," Dents admitted, handing over the form. "The colonel was in a mood, made a terrible mess, but I got it signed." Harkin looked at the paper. He looked at the blood signature. He looked at Dents, the most unsoldierly soldier who ever lived. You got the paper?" Harkin whispered. "Aye. Can we get the supplies now? My socks are damp."
The official Imperial records state that the siege of Sector 44 was broken by a saint of the Administratum, a lone warrior who walked through fire to slay the Beast of Iron. Trooper Dents was promoted. He didn't want the promotion. It meant more paperwork. He remains a private by choice, currently assigned to the supply depot on a quiet agri-world. He is the only man in the history of the Guard to have a confirmed kill count that includes a Chaos Lord, a Land Raider, and 3,000 cultists, all achieved without ever successfully firing his own weapon. The lesson here is strange but true. In a galaxy of gods and monsters, there is no armor stronger than ignorance. The universe thrives on drama, on fear, on the epic clash of wills. But when confronted with a man who simply refuses to acknowledge the genre of the story he is in, the universe tends to get confused and let him win. Chaos seeks to break the spirit, but you cannot break a spirit that is focused entirely on obtaining toilet paper. The Emperor protects, but sometimes he protects the idiots just to see what happens next. End recording. Filed under Anomalies, Statistical. Cross-reference, Capes, Hazard Assessment, Dents, Trooper.